Welcome to Phillips Mill Art Talk. I'm Laura Womack. Jen McHugh is our technical director.
Hi, everyone.
Jean Mihich is our producer. And tonight we have with us Sean Mount. He's a realist painter who depicts the beauty of our modern landscape, where trees have grown up on the farmlands that Daniel Garber and his contemporaries painted. Sean also captures the tragedy of invasive species in a battle with natives. He believes that his landscapes are far from the nostalgia that some contemporary art fans believe the genre to be, but rather Sean's landscapes are stark reality. His wilderness is a changing array of scars from previous afflictions. Sean received a 2019 fellowship from the New Jersey State Council on the Arts. He studied biology and literature at Earlham College in Indiana. After a career as a decorative painter and muralist, Sean spent a decade in New York City working in film and television as a scenic artist. There he won 3 Art Directors Guild Awards for his work on Mr. Robot and The Night Of. He's a self-taught oil and watercolor painter, and Sean is a naturalist and hobby ornithologist who also forages for mushrooms. Welcome to Art Talk, Sean Mount.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Laura, and thanks to Jen and Jean for facilitating.
Thanks so much. All right, and thank you all in the audience for joining us as well. Please join us with your questions, be part of the conversation. And I see we already have a question in the Q&A. We'll check that out in a minute. But yes, the Q&A where we can find them easily. Jen will have thoughts for you in the chat. And Jen, let's go right to some artwork. Okay. Sean, tell us. Yes.
So my studio is at Pearlsville Mill, the complex there outside Stockton. And this painting, well, I started it right before Hurricane Ida, which totally changed this landscape and a lot of the river towns around here. So that's a storm coming in on the horizon. It was tricky to get that blue. And I also, over the years, this little spot with the spillway has been used by a lot of people. There are a lot of immigrant families and townsfolk that come here to swim and picnic. And I think they put up signs now. I'm not sure you can get away with it as easily anymore. But I don't know. It's a beautiful spot. And I don't know. I was able to get a bunch of the species, it looks like there. I see a sycamore, I see a sumac. I don't know, that sort of thing is important to me.
Why is that, Sean?
Probably because I'm so aware of the native plants that I grew up with, and then how they're sort of being edged out or edged to the edges. And I don't know. I always just sort of, I'm very aware of all the plants that I see when I'm hiking around, when I'm pausing to paint or take reference photos. It's a part of the story of our landscape now. And I don't know, I think of my, the lineage of painting around here. I'm not sure people ever really thought about that too much, even though there have been invasives here for hundreds of years.
So, when I read your description, and I cribbed from your artist's notes on your website to be totally fair, as I'm sure you recognized. I wasn't really thinking about it. The Impressionists like Daniel Garber and Redfield, of course, were painting these beautiful landscapes. And, I was not really questioning the subject that they were painting, but you pointed out that what they were painting was also disturbed wilderness.
Yes, I've been challenged for my inclusion of species of plants, but especially invasives in my paintings. And it's a little confusing to me because I'm a realist, and that's what's out there. And I tend to think that painting I don't know, big, beautiful, important trees, or even idealized vacation landscapes, or I don't know, all sorts of idealized things that you see in another set of paintings. I think it's kind of boring, and I think it's important uh, to do this now. But also Garber, yeah, Garber painted quarries. He painted deforested landscapes. Um, in fact, a lot of the woods that I go into now to explore, they didn't exist back then. Some of the views that I paint now, if I'm standing on a ridge overlooking the river, chances are that was all cut down to make way for fields. And now maybe it's a 60, 80-year-old forest, maybe a little older, maybe it looks old, but that the virgin forest is more or less removed from this area. So I don't know. It's interesting to think that I am painting views that didn't exist then, just as they were painting views that still don't exist now.
And I think your work is really challenging our assumptions about what we're seeing in the environment. So I thank you for that. I think that alone is a very interesting thing to bring to your art, but then your paintings are so beautiful. We want to see a lot of it, but let's just, when I first saw this painting before the Hurricane Ida, I had to look very closely. I mean, you don't consider yourself a photorealist, but you're getting amazing realism.
Well, thanks. I mean, yeah, realism, I don't know. I mean, I don't ascribe to a certain code or anything like that, but I do consider myself a realist.
Sorry, I meant photorealist, but my apologies. Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, a lot of people look at especially my big paintings, and I think they say, oh, it's almost photorealistic, and I don't. I'm certainly not striving for that at all. In fact, if you get up close, you can see brush strokes, and it's pretty three-dimensional canvas. And I think of a lot of photorealistic art as being very worried over the shading, and it's very two-dimensional because it's so fussy. And that kind of bores me. I like the physical act of painting, and well, I don't have the patience really to to go for that kind of realism. I think the patience that I have is to, I don't know, figure out the brush strokes of what makes a sycamore leaf, what works, what brush to use, how to move my arm and my hands, how to twirl the brush, um, to make that shape over and over if I have to. Um, I don't know. Does that answer?
Yeah. Yeah. Jen, you if we can see the next painting. And here we go.
That's pretty photorealistic. Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, these are my beloved black raspberries. I grew up with black raspberries everywhere in my yard. And their taste, the act of gathering them when I was a little kid, it's just, it's something I treasure from my childhood. And oddly, I think I've been wanting to paint this painting for a long time, and I just finished it late last year. Um, a lot of people think that the bluish purple stalks are invasives. I've talked to people who cut them down to make way for more wineberries, which they grew up with because they're so prevalent. I remember when the first wineberry bush it appeared up the street at my neighbor's house, and they came running over and said, "Try this, try this." And yeah, they're delicious. They're not as good as black raspberries, but I don't know. I'm on my own personal mission to get people to leave these alone and to start to ignore the wineberries, which are inferior and really invasive.
How
I
do you
don't know.
tell the difference? Just
It was to scratch an itch to paint this painting.
okay. Well,
It's kind
fair
of for
enough.
myself.
How do you tell the difference between, as long as you're a naturalist as well, let's expand our knowledge.
All right, the wineberries are those fuzzy, uh, red stalks that produce bright red berries that are delicious. And these black raspberries are this kind of neon blue with like fuchsia undertones, which sort of tricks your eye into thinking that they're purple, but it's really like this neon powder blue coating on the stalk. So leave those alone, please.
They sound delicious. I think I get the red variety, the red stock variety. So Sean, back to the art. So you startled yourself with your photorealism here. I can't even imagine how you do that. I mean, to me, it's a miracle that you can even convey the idea of a plant. I mean, as a non-artist, interviewing artists, I'm in awe of you all. But is it careful observation, or how do you translate so clearly from reality to paint to canvas?
I just try really hard.
That sounds like state secrets there.
That's it. No, I mean, I think I always have something in mind that's going to be part of the narrative for me as a naturalist. I want certain things to stick out. So sometimes it's just the color of something. Sometimes it's a plant that I know and love. Sometimes it's a juxtaposition. But I will focus um, very minutely on that. So, for me, it's the berries here, obviously, and those little hairy leaflets sprouting up. I don't know. I just I get out my one bristle brush, as John Schmidberger likes to joke about. Hi, John.
Hi, John. All right. Jen, let's see the next one, please. Oh, John says hi.
Right. This is my new favorite apple painting. I've probably done, I don't know, 100 of them now. And it started probably at the tail end of the pandemic. I was doing this series of observed from life watercolor still lifes, just constructions that I made in my house as we were on quarantine. And towards the end, I was able to get out and go to the orchard. And also, Gary and his wife Amy had commissioned a painting for over their bar in their cidery at Manoff Market Gardens. And so I spent a bunch of time at the orchard with Gary, and it's hard not to fall in love with orchard folk and what they do. And I don't know, he just gave me a bunch of apples, and who knows if I asked him or if it was his idea, who knows. But this particular painting is a recent one. It's a wine sap, and I don't know, I keep churning them out, and people keep buying them, which is great. I love learning about the new varieties, and I eat them all. Every single one I've painted, I've eaten. I don't know what that gets me in the annals of painting, but it's true.
Part of the pleasures of your work. So you're
Yeah,
completely committed on all levels
that's right.
to nature, and your work is a reflection of that.
That's right. I like to take it inside of myself. Yep, whenever possible.
Right.
The other thing about these paintings that I'm proud of, or at least I find somewhat interesting, or I hope to be interesting, is that I've decided to make them all falling apples. And below, you can't see in this cropping, but below I like writing in cursive because I have good handwriting. I like to see it. But I've written below the apple, this is a wine sap apple handed to me by Gary Manoff, and then painted with the date. And they all have that. And one of the reasons I can justify just painting apples, the reason I think it's worthwhile is because to me, it's sort of a botanical study. But then see that little cartoon line of the apple falling?
Yes.
Um, you know what that is, because you're literate in cartoons, that a little line means that it's falling, right? So that's sort of another art form that is part of this. And then the written in cursive below, it's very personal. It's almost like it's diaristic almost, because it's a little slice of my life too. Um, and I like that kind of strange mashup. I think it's more interesting than just painting an apple sitting there on a white background.
Well, I mean, the surface color of your apple, I mean, this is, you're not painting perfection. This apple maybe has a little bit of ripeness to go, maybe not. This is our experience of the apple. And it has that mottled, progression of color. It's even your apple is an amazing achievement.
Thanks. Well, that's sweet of you to say. No, everyone keeps joking at the studio. Oh, you're the apples that I end up not painting, because usually I have more than I need. Um, they sit there and they rot in the refrigerator, and I have no intention yet of painting rotten apples, but I think that'll be pretty interesting. I think the surfaces get even more interesting as they decompose. So we'll see.
Goes back to the Dutch masters, right?
That's right. That's right. Now stick a lobster next to it, and I'm sad. Lobster
Very
and tulip.
good. Okay, Jen, what's up next? Maybe, nice.
That is the painting that Gary and Amy commissioned from the orchard. You can see it. It's on permanent display above the bar, the cidery. It's kind of tricky to come up with this because they didn't really know what they wanted. They gave me free artistic license, as they say, and having spent lots of time just tromping around, apples stay on the trees into November, and many of the other trees have dropped their leaves. And I don't know. I love the idea of painting the sunset out there. They get beautiful sunsets at the orchard. So this picture isn't quite faithful to that color pink down there at the bottom right, but it's an implied sunset. But I thought the perspective of looking up into an apple tree and seeing, that's what you do when you're at the orchard, when you're walking around, you look up. And it's also sitting above the bar. So I thought it'd be strange if you looked above the bar and saw a perspective that didn't make sense. So it's for the spot in which it hangs.
Yeah, and it's a really different choice. But maybe here, and maybe it's a little unusual for you as well, because there's a little bit of romanticism in this with your ideal pink and all.
It's
What
not
do you think?
romantic.
No?
No romanticism whatsoever. It's that's what you see when you go to Manos.
So well done, them. It's true. It is
Thanks.
beautiful there.
That's right. It's real. It's realism.
It's real. Okay. And we do live in a lovely area. Okay, Jen, let's take some of those questions. We started off with a bunch. So let's honor our commitment and get some of those questions from our audience.
Okay, great. The first one that came in, you got some deep ones here, Sean. Stuart asked, please reflect on the spiritual aspects of your work.
Hi, Stu. Yeah, that's I don't have a ready answer for that. But I will say that I certainly take to heart my experience in the woods. I mean, every moment that I'm there, I was telling my wife Allie about how, especially in the spring, when I'm walking through the woods, I'm watching my footfalls. Some part of my brain is doing that. I'm also listening for birds because I can bird by ear, and then I'm looking for things flitting around or whatever, and I'm being aware of oh, is this a tulip poplar? Might there be some morels under the tulip poplar? And there's just a lot going on, and I feel connected, and I feel in awe of in that it's such a human experience. It's one of the most pure human experiences, and I guess I guess, Stu, what you're asking is about that awe. I think that's why I do it all, um, is to connect. I think that that's what I would call God. I think that that's what I would call my experience with nature is awe. And what better way to come by it than that? I wish you could
There's
ask a follow-up.
so it makes me think there's a European philosopher, Alain de Botton, who wrote that for the modern secularists, are really missing out by some important experiences like awe and feeling smaller than the infinite,
Mm,
and that you can get that in nature. So all of your words made me think of that. So,
I think
and
that's
also.
very apt.
Also, your gallerist checked in on that one as well. Jen, I think we've got something from John Schmidberger. So it's
Oh,
so
yes.
here.
Hi, John. John said, Cezanne said, with an apple, I want to astonish Paris. Comment?
This is Stump the Artist night here.
Yeah,
I
no,
said
this
they
is
were
great.
not easy.
You know what, John? Why don't you use that for a caption for one of your Mr. Pig cartoons?
Oh, there we go.
Um, yeah, that's I don't know. I think he was a little too big for his britches, or he knew that Paris was watching him, and I don't have that comfort, though. I would like it.
All right. Let's take a couple of more, Jen.
Okay, this kind of goes along with what we're talking about. Anne Woodbury said that she had the honor and privilege of working with your mother, Janine,
Janine.
on Doylestown Township's EAC, Environmental Advisory Council, that she was a longtime native plant advocate. How much has she influenced your viewpoint on nature?
It was all my idea. No, it wasn't. Um, I mean, my mother and my grandmother especially were naturalists, and I think I think my mother and I actually both grew together um, in recent decades to be more aware of the natural world. Um, I certainly give her a lot of credit for making me aware of this and that aspect of native plants and our environment. But I think I don't know. I mean, I grew up in the woods, and my grandmother certainly influenced that. My mother would take me to the woods since I was a little tiny kid, so it was definitely an influence. But I don't know. I mean, my mother has been a tireless advocate for native plants and um, planting bird-friendly, pollinator-friendly gardens and things like that, which I very much admire. Um, we definitely inform each other.
That's marvelous. That's a wonderful relationship.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to the paintings.
That is a good example, probably, though I don't know for absolute sure, of a view that wouldn't have been there 100, 150 years ago. That's right up from Dilly's, if you know where that is. It's overlooking the river valley, so somewhere nestled down there is the river, and in the forefront there's a tulip poplar, and there are some mayapple, and maybe there are some little baby morels. Who's to say? Um, but yeah, that's something that I don't think Redfield would have actually seen, because that hillside, I mean, you can tell through the painting that those trees probably aren't older than 60 or 80 years. It was probably logged for making charcoal or for the lumber. I was particularly proud of the background color. I'm not sure this photograph that I provided you quite gets the color right. Um, but that blue that you see on those early spring days when you're looking over the misty valley is, I don't know, my eye just goes there, and I was trying to capture that.
Well, it's an interesting painting because I mean, you're really, in a way, you're almost looking at two different landscapes here, right? You're looking at the trees in the foreground, but you're also seeing, and suggestively, the distance. This, and I think that's a really, I mean, it's a hard subject to convey. And so it's an interesting choice. It happens to be my husband's favorite, one of his favorites of your work.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, he's fond of May apples as well. But were you, I mean, does this, it seems to me an intimidating scene to try to paint and convey.
Yes. That challenge of creating depth, looking through trees that aren't leafed out, is something I'm kind of obsessed with. In part probably because it's so difficult, but if I manage to pull it off, I feel really proud of it, and I feel like there's a great reward in the endeavor. But yeah, that I feel like that depth and that awareness of that huge screen of trees and all of its potential, um, what you're looking forward to. I don't know. I hope that it makes you think of spring, and I hope it makes you think of time, and I hope it makes you feel like you're having some kind of fever dream, like this is a portrait of that moment, where things are going to change any minute. This is actually probably a few weeks away from where we are now.
That's an exciting thought. While Jen pulls up the next one, I want to ask you about the landscape, the place of landscape in our modern art context. I mean, that's something we talk about at Phillips Mill a lot because we are known as the birthplace of Pennsylvania Impressionists, which is, of course, a very important movement in American art. And we want to honor the past, but we want to stay relevant. What do you think about the landscape in the context of Damien Hirst and et cetera?
And Jeff Koons and
Jeff Koons.
right. Um, I think it's far more important than Jeff Koons's his endeavor, which I appreciate, but he antagonizes me. So does Damien Hirst, who I also appreciate. But I think that I think that they both do important, interesting work. But I think that landscapes are important to go back to because they ground us in the world that we're living in. Not the urban world, which we see so much. We see so much painting of that, which is also can be done so well and can be really important too. But painting the natural landscape in the face of what might feel like, I don't know, fragmentary culture. Certainly, there's fragmentary politics and a world on fire and going crazy. I think that the landscape is something that we, even though it's always changing and always will change and always has changed, is there. And it is a source of awe. And it's something that we all can relate to. I mean, I think that it's also endlessly fascinating. I mean, so can be the urban landscape. I mean, there's the stickers that people put on poles always change too, but it's not the same thing because that's knowable. There's a QR code, there's a website or something you can look up and learn more of. But I think that the natural world, I mean, we don't have walruses and narwhals here, but the Maasai don't have walruses or narwhals either, and their environment is absolutely fascinating in southern Kenya, and I don't know, I find that even if it's the woods that you remember behind your elementary school or at your best friend's house or at the park or whatever. I think it's something that we really hold on to in our memory, and I think that it's something that we're all trying to go back to. Everyone says I'd like to make time for a walk outside. Well, do it. I mean, and explore. I'm not advocating for trailblazing or getting off the path. You shouldn't do that, kids. But I don't know. Let yourself be pulled out there, I guess. It's one of my pedantic messages for the evening.
Sounds good to me. All right, let's take another look at a painting. This was in Phillips Mill, wasn't it, Sean?
No,
No, I feel like I saw it there, but okay.
no, I finished that from my recent show.
Okay. At John Schmidberger's gallery.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, Laura, that's a little bit romantic, I guess, by color alone. But it's the Lakatong Creek. Um, I don't know. I'm not sure I have much to say about this one except that it's just a gorgeous scene. And you know, um, something that I don't shy away from is the sort of awkward um, shapes that tree branches make. I like the kind of uh, hieroglyphs that appear before you. Um, my yeah, I had a friend, Mark, who would encourage me to do this. He passed away a couple years ago, and he would always be fascinated by those shapes. He would find some meaning in them, and I don't know. I kind of do focus on. I use that as part of my composition. So here's a good example, I guess.
Well, I think that actually is, one of the more interesting aspects of your work, and it goes back to the, as I cribbed from your website, the array of scars, right? I feel like that, this very contorted branch that we're seeing right in the center of this is, that's a reaction to something happened with the sun and there was something there and maybe it's not there anymore. And,
Right.
we're not seeing the branches forming, angles that draw you into the painting. I mean, you're having to contend with the chaos that is there from what's
Right.
written there, right?
Right. And I mean, from a technical point of view, that's part of what I really try to. It's one of the things I've tried to get good at is balancing a painting, balancing a composition in these extremely complicated ways instead of just using, easy focal points. I really like there to be, an interesting sort of a playground for your eyes to bounce around in and settle on. But yeah, that's exactly right. That idea came to me after it comes from a medical term, which is the word is sequela. I'm not sure if that's the right pronunciation, but it's a scar from a pre-existing condition. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that's just thinking about our landscape and all the quarries that are grown over and things like that. So that's exactly right.
Yeah. Also, this painting I think is really remarkable for the water, which is not right up there in front, but you're seeing, that sort of slightly muddied water. You're seeing the silty. You can imagine stepping in there and feeling that very soft and slipperiness of that soil,
Yeah,
maybe
and that's
mixed with
sediment.
algae.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny. I haven't really like name checked many people because I have a lot of influences, but I have to say that the children's book illustrator Garth Williams, is that his name? I think he illustrated a bunch of um, well-known children's books. Anyway, he would put fish in the water, and as a kid, I would need that. If there was a stream or something and there weren't any fish in it, it would enrage me. So I really love the idea of looking down into the water because that's what you want to do anyway. You want to see around the reflections. You want to see under the reflections. So I try to pick points of view where you can see down through the water. It's trickier to paint, obviously, but that's what I want to see. It's down there.
Down there.
Crayfish, salamanders.
So Jen is here, and she shared with me George Nakashima found beauty in a burl tree growth in which the grain has grown in a deformed manner. That's right. And also that she's seen texture here that is maybe different from some of your other works. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I focused on winter woods for quite a while there, and I'll keep on painting that sort of subject matter for sure because I love it. But I mean, I needed to paint some ferns. I get really bored with dead leaves. I made a sign for myself in my studio to keep myself humble, but also as sort of a braggy joke to myself, I'm the king of dead leaves because I think I've painted millions of them. And I think there's a Russian painter I've found that has painted nearly enough, but let's call him a prince of dead leaves. I'm the king. So I really wanted to paint. Yeah, there's one. There's some dead leaves. But in that last one, I really wanted to paint some green and some pinks and some yellows.
Yeah, nice. All right, well, I have been monopolizing. Jen, we've got some Q&A piling up, so let's give other people a chance.
Okay, we're going to start with, there are two that are a little bit easier. Jim and Joyce basically asked the same question. Yes. Do you paint in plein air or do you take photographs and then finish in the studio?
I do both. I've completed a bunch of plein air paintings, and I don't focus on that in part because I really like my paintings to be complicated. I don't have that same ethic of, or I don't really go for the the purely plein air painting for no good reason except that I need there to be more texture and more detail. And though that would be possible, it's a problem with the light and the changing of the seasons. And I also like to paint large, mostly, especially for my, my most thought out pieces. So to do that, I have to take hundreds and hundreds of reference photos. And I also do a lot of site visits. So maybe I'll start a big painting, I'll go back to the site and check on it and see, I can't tell from my reference photos if what tree's in front of what, and how is that vine growing? Oh, it comes towards me. Oh, now I see. And then I can make it, it adds to the verisimilitude of the final painting. I don't know. I really admire and respect plein air painters who just do that. I mean, I can't do that. It's its own skill and it's amazing. So yeah, both.
Okay. Do you want a tough question or an easier question?
Give me a toughie.
You want tough? Okay. Mary says, art influences society. Can you elaborate on how your work does so?
How I influence society, how my work influences society. I mean, I think I touched on my goal a little bit before about how I want people to be aware of the woods, I guess. But if there's an authority to painting and then large scale oil painting in particular, just the fact that it exists, that someone was crazy enough to put this much time into it. When you're stopped in front of a painting and you can't help but take it seriously. This is what happens to me when I, go to the Met or to a gallery show that I really love. Um, the fact that I'm doing this, that I'm doing realist depictions of things that not many people are doing, well, maybe that's not true. And if that's not true, please send me other people that are doing winter woods, please. Um, I'd like some contemporary influences and some conversations about the difficulties. But how I influence society. Hmm,
Well, we've talked a little bit about that, haven't we, Sean,
we
about
did.
your perspective on the woods and, the changing nature of them. I think that's a really important conversation that you're having, and that people want to have now.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. I think that if it creates awe in anybody, I've done my job, And I think that if it's a spiritual feeling or something else, I think that that's. I mean, look, I think that a lot of contemporary art does such a good job of parsing the little bits of human experience that we have, the confusion that we have, that we experience in this modern world. I mean, the beginning of modern art, I think, was um, trying to describe how weird it was to be on a train and see the landscape going fast and then to see billboards floating out there. I mean, that sort of experience was new at one time. And I think that sort of thing probably played into the creation of modern art. And now, people have accent walls in their room that are, a huge swath of blue, and it's not weird anymore. And we're inundated with, little snippets of experience. And I think that a lot of modern art, a lot of conceptual modern art, um, does a really good job of describing that part of human experience. And I think that landscape painting, like I said before, it's more of a coherence of our. It's not fragmented. I mean, yes, it's complicated, but it's mystery. It's a depiction of mystery, or it's a depiction of the expression of mystery that nature is. And that's still a part of human experience. And I think that society would do well to not ignore that as much as I think it does.
All right, good. Let's take a look at some of that mystery.
That is actually the title, I think, does a good job of creating mystery or acknowledging mystery, let's say. Um, that was one of my many trips to the top of Bowman's Hill during lingering fog. Um, Probably late winter when it starts to unseasonably warm up or something. There's a big fog cloud that just sits there on top of Bowman's Hill. And that's a grapevine creating one of those hieroglyphics. And 200 years, the title, I mean, it might as well be 200 years ago, even though maybe that landscape didn't exist then, but it existed at some point. Um, Maybe it's 200 years in the future. Doesn't matter.
Sean, you're not afraid to put interest in the middle.
No. What do you wait?
That rule of thirds and all that, right?
Yeah, I like to disregard that. I think that I mean the way that I work on a painting is that I work on it until it doesn't annoy me anymore. I trust my own sense of composition enough so that I can. I mean, I am aware of golden ratios and all that sort of thing. And I'd lie if I said it didn't play into my thinking, but I don't adhere to it. Um, because if it's a little off in the background, then I can can make it right in the foreground. Or if the midground has too much interest, I don't know, I like to really play with it until it feels right. and is comforting in its composition. In other words, doesn't it annoy me?
I don't annoy you. Okay, let's take a look at another one. So while Jen is pulling that up, I just want to ask you, like, well, this is perfect for my question. I have about zero patience, and I look at your work and I think this guy has all of it. How can you possibly take the time to do that? It's just this like a year's worth of work right here. How? That's what
Um,
I want to know.
I mean, it's tough to describe because there are times when I'm sitting in the studio looking at the wall or looking out the window when I'm sure I'll never make another coherent painting because it just won't happen. And then I have to change the music or change the podcast or turn the radio off or uh, try something else entirely or maybe have some water. Thank you, Jessica. Or gosh, I mean, all the little variables, it has to be just right. Maybe I need a coffee. Maybe I have to wait for that coffee to wear off. Um, I do have to feel inspired and comfortable, and my brain really has to be ready to focus. And once I get over that initial hump of starting a painting, then uh, guilt is the driving factor because I don't want to unfinished painting on my wall. It's the worst thing in the world. It's not guilt. And it's not compulsion. I don't know. It's this. I got to see it finished. I have to realize my idea. I have to see the vision executed. Um, and also the background where I start. I do work. I tend to work because especially on these paintings that have so much depth. I start with the back, so I cover the whole canvas with the background, and then work forward. So I'm ending with the foreground, which is by far the most interesting and most engaging thing to paint because you get the brightest colors and the darkest darks and the lightest lights. And I have to get there. I have to, and it's coincidence, but that's once I've done that, then the painting's done.
So it's goal oriented. I mean, I'm just looking at some of these leaves in the front. Each individual one is unique. This is not impressionism at all.
Right.
I feel like each individual leaf has its own light and shadow and, all the veins are there. And then look how many leaves there are.
Well, it's interesting. I don't have enough patience to actually do what you described. There is a lot of shorthand going on, and there's also a lot of study. So I think there's a sugar maple, there's a blackjack oak, there's a burning bush, dirty invasive burning bush, and maybe a black oak over there. But I'll study those plants and then sort of learn how they look through observation on site, maybe through a plein air study, and then certainly using my reference photos. And then when I can understand what they do and how the light's playing on that particular tree or bush or whatever, then I can go in and work with the composition and add more here or make up a branch or um, put shadows in behind. And it's only a few leaves that have veins in them or that are really finely rendered, and those are the focal points. But it's enough to kind of make the rest of it make sense.
All right. So we've got about 10 minutes and we have a bunch of unanswered questions from our audience. So we have a lot of paintings also we haven't looked at. So what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, Sean, is maybe we can flip through a couple of them
Sure.
while we answer the questions, and we're gonna have to be a little bit tight about it.
Okay.
So Jen, those are sort of both your areas. You want me to take some questions while you flip?
Now,
Yeah.
Karen asked, how long have you been painting in oils? And because you say you are self-taught, which artists influence your style? Your paintings are so realistic.
Thank you for that. There's so many influences just by my own free study. I mean, I have friends that have influenced me. Jason Beers, well, in particular. Hi, Jason, if you're there. Um, I mean, geez, oil painting. I've probably dabbled in oil paint in high school. Nothing came of it at all. College too. I didn't learn anything. I took a class or two, but I honestly, they were the worst classes, and I learned nothing. There was no color theory. There was no how to paint. It was like this free form, make something, and then we'll talk about it. And it just, I left confused. Um, and then my friend John Huber brought me to a painting session with George Thompson in Doylestown, probably in 2005, 2004, something like that. And after a few sessions just drawing, I decided to get out my old oil paints, which I hadn't used in a decade. And I don't know, I just got into it and kept trying and looking at art. I would go to the library in Doylestown and just look into art books. And then I bought some art books, and then I would look at my friends' art books, and then went to shows and galleries. Yeah, these are all my summer creek paintings. I intend to make some more of those because it's one of my favorite things in the whole world. Though I find the winter woods fascinating and beautiful, this is what I do all summer. Go swimming in creeks.
All right. We are burning up the time and we're getting more questions. So we want to respect the questions, but we're going to tighten it up a little bit. Thanks, Sean.
You want another question then, Laura?
Yes, please.
Anne asked, becoming a father would obviously change your life. Did becoming a father change your art?
Yes. It's a struggle to get to the studio. I have to somehow find a way to be more focused. There's just less time. I have a near 2-year-old, and I want to spend as much time with her as possible. And then other times I really want to get away from her and let her nap and work. It's a bit of a struggle, but I'm making it work. I think it will actually change my subject matter. I don't know. I'm seeing the world a little bit differently through her eyes, and oddly, she's bringing up a lot of childhood memories. So we'll see. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what will happen.
You've said you want to hear more, you want to paint more people.
I do. I've painted people, I've painted crowd scenes and things like that in the past, and I would love to incorporate people into my paintings. I think I want to paint parties. It seems like a very daunting task, but I do know that they're going to be very detailed and specific in certain ways.
I'm not surprised. So why parties, Sean? I think we have some too, Jen. We have a party picture. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how successful this one is. It's kind of an experiment. It's me jumping off into that realm. Actually, I can't stand this painting. I think it's a failure. It's so awkward. But I want to make more finely rendered versions of parties. I don't know. It's if I can depict people interacting, I think that it's sort of an opposite of what I'm trying to do through the landscapes. The landscapes I think of as sort of mirrors for the viewer, and I think that a party, you sort of try to get into everyone's head, and if I can depict those interactions, I think I'll have done what I was after. I don't know. We'll see.
Right. I'm just going to object to that because I think it's a great painting. And I think that this is the artist speaking as he explores new territory. I love all the people who are there and the great time they're having. And I think, again, it's almost like all your leaves. I see them there. So, but
Yeah, the sparklers take their place, right?
yeah. So, but we have 3 more questions.
Okay.
And we have 4 minutes.
Lightning
Jen?
round.
Okay. Anonymous asks, was your artistic talent evident when you were very young, for example, grade school? Mothers of elementary students want to know.
Great
I mean,
question.
I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I think my mother still has some of those, but I mean, I do remember focusing on the jawline of a Tyrannosaurus Rex when I was really young. I'm going to say 4, 5 maybe, and getting some kind of praise for that, you know, with like a brown crayon. Um, yeah, it was there. I've cultivated it. I've had an ability, I've had a dexterity and a way of seeing. I think that's been there. I didn't quite always know that though.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That was a great question. Jen, what is next?
Kevin asked, with your paintings of moments, is your intention to create a feeling that quickens the heart, as Chris Marker would say?
Hi, Kevin. um, yeah, that's a really good description. I think that I don't necessarily think of the paintings as moments. I mean, I suppose that paintings of sparklers or parties would be moments. So, yeah, I'll probably think about that lovely quote as I'm moving towards making more pictures of moments. Um, I think the landscapes are more timeless or out of time, maybe.
All
Okay,
right.
last one. You want me to go for
Yes,
it?
please. Yeah.
Okay, Natalie asked, did your professional work as a scenic influence how you prepare your personal art at all, or are they completely separate beasts? Sorry, I messed reading that up. Reading, blah.
Well, to be a scenic artist is really to pay very minute, close attention to the surfaces of things around you at all times because you're replicating them. Um, you know, the smudges from hands on doors, um, or the way that, well, I'm looking at a door, so I'm going to talk about a door, or the way the latch, you know, will hit the door as it closes, and we'll wear the paint away. We'll chip it a little bit right there. Those little tiny details exist everywhere in the world, and I think that scenic art was a really good fit for me, who already had that sort of tendency. Um, I think I learned maybe some patience, and some value to detail, um, being a scenic artist. But I don't know. I think it was just a fantastic profession that fit who I am.
Yeah, I could see it really forcing your attention on, the minutia, just because that's what makes it real for us. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah, those little bits of focus are really the things that propel narrative or, yeah, make a painting.
Yeah. Sean Mount, thank you so much for sharing your artwork and your experience of it behind the brush. We really had a nice time, didn't we, Jen? Yeah.
Well, thank you too. Jen was nodding her head if anyone was wondering what her response was. She did have a good
Yes, she
time.
was.
Phew.
She did.
Thank you both so much. That was great.
We had a marvelous time. And thank all of you for joining us here on Phillips
Yes,
Mill Art
thank you. I
Talk.
can't believe how many people tuned in. Amazing.
It was really nice. And we're hoping you'll come back. We have a real photographer as opposed to not a photorealist coming next, let's see, on April 28th. We're having a special in our photo jurist, Tom Girdle, who's an amazing photographer. He shot every form, I think, of photography. And he's also done some AI photographs, which I'm really excited to see. So check that out. And then in April, we have Dot Bun on our fourth Wednesday of the month. So we've got a lot of fun stuff coming up. Jen McHugh is our technical director. Thank you, Jen.
This was a fun one. Thank you, Sean. Loved
Thank
it.
you.
And thanks so much to Jean Mihich, our producer. Yeah, I'm Laura Womack. Thanks for joining us. Good night.